Ian, we got a Patreon, don't we?
We do patreon.com/CU podcast.
You go. You leave us voice messages.
I'm losing my voice.
The voice message is next because we started later this podcast. So we had you can get the exclusive podcast. You get us in full video form for the entire thing. You get a writing that you don't probably do today, and you get this the Patreon poll. In second place, you get offended when others dislike retro games you love, 32%. First place, notable retro female game characters over the years. And we thought about this as a potential topic on the heels of the Video Game History Foundation releasing both an article and a video looking at the first human female character in a game, which happened in an Atari game called Wabbit.
An Atari game from 82 called Wabbit. It was for a long time. So she was there was a person in the credits named Ban Tran, who was credited with the game and creating the first human female character in the game. And no one could find any info on her. And as a lot of these things are, it was kind of a case of some slight misspellings. And, marriage changes the last names, especially back then, women would take the last name a lot. So Ban Tran was actually Van Tran. She got married and she is now Van Mai. And they found her. They were able to talk to her. She remembers, the era very well. She said she really enjoyed it. She said that she started off when she started making games for what's this company? Apollo. She started making games for Apollo. She did very well. And then she did games for a little bit after Apollo, and she talks about how she didn't need to interview because the person interviewing her knew her, very well from her work at Apollo. She was really good at it. She started taking computer classes, and I think it was the late 70s, with one of her friends, night classes, because, it seemed like a field that they would be interested in and they could get some work in. So that's kind of where that started. And, what does she do now?
Things in financial.
She hasn't done it in a long time, but she's, kind of happy to see that, this has come back up. So it's a nice story. Definitely read it. The game looks interesting.
Shooter.
Apparently the game is very hard to play.
You have to shoot at rabbits going back and forth across they're trying to get
your carrots.
It's an Atari game. It's a single screen. It is what it is.
It's cute though.
So talking about, female video game characters and like important ones, we talked about video game years, Miss Pac-Man as being the first one, anthropomorphized at least to me. The first one, according to this Giant Bomb article, might have been Ladybug in '81. It's a lady, it's a bug, it's a ladybug, it's a female character, but it's not like anthropomorphized, it's not a personality, but hey, we love Ladybug. We talked about it in video game years. Everyone loves Ladybug. It's an adorable maze game.
Yeah.
Where you have the traps on it. And then Kangaroo. Kangaroo was a mother kangaroo. We talked about that in video game years as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's as time has gone on, we have found women protagonists in games more often. But when you look back to the retro era of women protagonists in games, it's very sparse. And you have to look for things like Kangaroo or Ladybug. Or Miss Pac-Man. So to have like I said, a human female like in Wabbit is kind of big. And then you start to think really hard about what are some of the other women protagonists in games from that era, and it gets tough.
Looks on this list, it looks like most of them are in Japan. They make it over here.
Japan, and the ones that did, a lot of them are, the big thing you'll notice is a lot of them are disguised. Not disguised, but they're in some sort of suit. It's not known immediately. So examples would be Kissy from Baraduke, who I've talked about on the video game years, who was married to Taizo Hori, who is Dig Dug. And that's a shooter, but she flies around in a spacesuit with a gun. So you don't know it's a woman until you're told.
The original Samus.
Well, and that would be my next one. The next one would be Samus.
Next big one. Yeah.
The next big one would be Samus. Famously reveals herself to be a woman at the end of the original Metroid.
I remember when that was revealed. I forget if it was in Counselor's Corner or if it was classified information, which gave you the code to unlock it. I thought I try to remember what, like when I was like 8 when I saw that, what I thought. Trying to think back, I probably thought, well, that's kind of interesting. Like I don't know, like I wish I remember when I first saw that. Like when I first was that one first revealed, what my thoughts were as an 8-year-old. Not that I didn't say, oh, ew, a girl. I just don't know what I thought at the time. Well, now I wish I knew what I thought when I saw like that green, hair in the little outfit or whatever.
One of my favorite games I talk about all the time was an early example of a female protagonist, but it was changed when it was brought to the U.S. City Connection. The driver in City Connection is named Clarice, and I mean, she was animated in commercials in Japan.
Okay.
In the Famicom version in Japan, she's the main character, in the front. When you get the U.S. version, they changed her to a generic short-haired blonde dude who's smoking a cigarette.
She's not still used on the box art and let me see, or the title screen.
No, you look at the U.S. title screen has a dude smoking a cigarette instead of her.
Oh man.
Yep.
I'm trying to see the long play. She doesn't show up at all on the title screen.
Not in the NES.
It's just the guy going like this, doing deuces.
I thought he had a cigarette in his hands.
No, not here. We would that barely flies in some games, but that's interesting.
Yeah.
Let me fast forward a little bit, if you allow me to.
Sure.
I don't think we bring up Chun-Li. I think not that it gets overlooked. That character is supremely important.
Oh, very important. I remember playing Street Fighter 2, and I'd get made fun of for picking Chun-Li because it was the girl. Yeah.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
So that was at 92. Street Fighter 2. Was it 92? I always forget. But that, because you have a strong female character. She's beating up guys. It's not like just like, oh, she's just a character that they've thrown in there. She's, thighs of steel and all that, and a great character, like a pick up and play character too. I think that's important. It's not like a complex character to learn, so maybe that helped people like use a character. It was 92, Street Fighter 2, or 91. I was great. It's 91. 91. So that's an important character. Now, obviously, we get to Lara Croft, and things change now because now you're in the mid 90s. You have games that are more, they're getting closer and closer to like a narrative sort of movie in terms of telling it more. We get more voice acting in games in the mid 90s. You have a lot more different things happening, and Lara Croft is sort of like an interesting moment in time. And you had it happen like Daedalus Encounter with Tia Carrera on the cover, of like these these full motion video games. You had a lot of women in there for obvious reason to appeal to like teenage boys like myself. But Lara Croft is obviously super important. Yeah, super important character.
Yeah, and I mean, there's that weird part in the 80s. So these characters get introduced, and I'm pulling some of this from an article by Ryan Lambie called "The Forgotten Early Heroines of Video Games." It's a nice little article, and there's a couple I didn't mention here. You have these characters, these women in video games, but they're all basically hidden. Okay. You can't have them out there as, you can't
market them.
You can't market it that way. You can't market it to boys, so they're hidden. It's kind of like this, we got you sort of thing. Then you get like Chun-Li. Okay, you get Chun-Li. But then you start getting this influx. Yeah. You start getting this influx, but it feels weird to count some of these early iterations because they were so developed for men. Sure. Straight men. That they're all very pretty. They all have huge chests, they all have, round asses. It's not until you look at the models for stuff like Ridge Racer, Lara Croft, man.
Polygon ass, sure.
Okay, you know what I'm getting at.
Yeah, they're sexualized.
Yeah, they're highly sexualized. Yeah. It's so you get hidden, then you get highly sexualized, and it takes a while for it to kind of like
even out.
Just become a thing.
Just become like it's accepted. We're going to put a woman in a game.
And even out, yeah.
Yeah, like on Unreal. You create your own character. You can be a female character, tons of armor on it, so yeah, once you get probably the late 90s is when it sort of even out a little bit more.
I would say mid 2000s.
Really that long?
Mid to late 90s is Lara Croft. That's all.
I'm talking, I guess late 90s is when.
Okay, I'll say 2000 and on, you start to see a pretty decent improvement in that era.
Okay, so yeah, and obviously today it's an afterthought. It doesn't matter anymore. You can market women to men for gaming or boys, and it's not a thing anymore to the same extent as it was. I wonder how important Sonya was, because Sonya was full motion video. You see a woman beating the crap out of guys.
I mean, probably about as important as Chun-Li. You start to see the representation, but it's always like there's one. And then the rest are guys. It's not until you get into some of the later games with big rosters where you start to see a more even, more even split.
That's how toys were, and that's unfortunate because like I would have.
You go from token female to actual, including female female representation.
You better watch yourself. G.I. Joe did not have token female.
I didn't say. I'm talking about Street Fighter and.
But I'm saying is they just
Mortal
had
Kombat.
less of them because I think boys didn't want them. When I would have loved to buy. A Scarlet figure. They only had one. They didn't have one like in the middle 80s. They had one Lady J. They only had 3 or 4 characters. G.I. Joe only had 4 female characters in the first line. Like I would have loved to have them. Like I would have loved to have more of them. Yeah, it's like they were like they always put at least one in each episode. They try to cycle them around. But like I think people take for granted how much boys were accepting of girl or female characters. Like that's like it was. I don't think we were. I never said ill girl.
I don't know. I grew up where a lot of boys were exactly that way. Like I said, I got made fun of for playing as Chun-Li.
Then little Pat was more aggressive than he thought because I loved playing with Tila and Evil Lynn as a kid. I loved playing with those characters or watching them. It was fine. So it's a good article, and check out the Video Game History Foundation video on Wabbit. I like that they use Wabbit because that's the pronunciation from
Wabbit
from Elmer Fudd there.